Savannah presses down like a damp palm, not heat, weight. Gas lamps glow through hanging moss, carriages rattle, tourists drift slow and careless. Everything moves, nothing rushes. Officer_EC, calm, focused male officer, early 30s, medium athletic build, defined jawline, short textured dark hair, light stubble, slightly tired eyes, natural skin texture with pores, tactical police uniform with subtle wear marks, grounded realistic expression drives with both hands steady at 9 and 3. No tension, no slack. Beside him, K9_Shadow, black and tan German Shepherd, black saddle pattern, black facial mask, golden tan fur, upright alert ears, amber eyes, small notch on left ear, muscular structure, realistic fur texture. Tactical K9 harness, sits upright. Silent. Watching. A loud engine cuts the square. Too fast, too confident. Tires scream. A trolley lurches. People shout. The car doesn't slow. It laughs and disappears. Red and blue light floods the moss. Shadow doesn't bark. He stiffens. And that's wrong. The humidity in Savannah didn't feel like weather. It felt like a hand. A wet, patient pressure that laid itself across the historic district and refused to lift, pressing down on cobblestones, gas lamps, and the hanging Spanish moss until the whole city seemed to breathe slower, thicker, as if it didn't want to wake anything sleeping in the dark. Officer Ethan Cole drove with both hands on the wheel at 9 and 3. Not tight. Tight hands overcorrected. Tight hands made mistakes when the street turned slick and narrow and full of blind corners. Ethan didn't make mistakes. He moved the cruiser the way he moved through everything, disciplined, deliberate, quiet enough that people underestimated him until it was too late. In the passenger side K9 seat insert, Shadow sat upright in his tactical harness, ears pricked forward, amber eyes catching every flicker of movement on the sidewalks. Shadow didn't pant, didn't whine. He simply watched. Ethan could feel the dog's focus like a second set of senses in the cabin. It wasn't just companionship, it was synergy, silent communication forged through training and bad nights, and the kind of trust that didn't need words. The radio crackled. Unit 12, routine patrol check. Ethan tapped the mic. Unit 12, reading. A beat of static. All quiet? Ethan's gaze slid across a row of antebellum mansions and high-end tourist traps dressed up for midnight. Pretty facades hiding the truth behind shutters. All quiet, he said. It wasn't a lie, not yet. Shadow's ears shifted, micro-adjusting towards something Ethan didn't hear at first. Then Ethan heard it too. A mechanical shriek, high and arrogant, an engine pushed too hard by someone who believed streets were built for them alone. Ethan's head turned slightly. A steel blue convertible, low-slung, expensive, and loud enough to announce itself like a threat, came tearing around the corner, tires screaming against ancient stone. The driver fishtailed, corrected late, and nearly clipped a horse carriage parked by the curb. The car swerved again, too close, straight into the path of a late-night trolley rolling through the square with a handful of tourists still clinging to the last ghost tour of the evening. Brakes hissed, passengers screamed. The trolley stopped inches from catastrophe. The convertible didn't even hesitate. It revved like it was laughing and punched forward, speed climbing again as it fled through the narrow streets. Ethan didn't shout. He didn't curse. He flipped the light switch. Red and blue strobes filled the square, splashing color across Spanish moss and gas lamp gold. The siren cut through the humidity like a blade. Shadow's body tightened, but he stayed seated, trained, waiting for command. Ethan threaded the cruiser into the street with a precision that turned the road into a funnel. The convertible's escape route vanished. It slammed on brakes, skidding slightly before stopping at an angle like even physics had to negotiate with wealth. Ethan pulled behind it, angled the cruiser for cover, and spoke without raising his voice. "Stay." Shadow's eyes locked on him. One blink, understanding, and the dog stayed in the insert, harness clipped, engine and AC running. Ethan stepped out into the humid night. The air smelled like jasmine and river salt and the faint metallic tang of old brick that had seen too much. He approached the driver's side, posture neutral, presence controlled. No heroic stance, no cinematic swagger. Just the steady reality of a cop who understood what escalation looked like from the inside. The driver stumbled out, early 20s, expensive shirt half unbuttoned, hair styled to look careless in a way that took effort. Bourbon rolled off him in a wave. His eyes narrowed when he saw Ethan's uniform, then flicked past Ethan toward the K9 markings on the cruiser. A sneer formed like it was familiar. "You got any idea how much that car costs?" The kid slurred. "You people scratch it, you'll be—" Ethan cut him off with a flat, professional tone. "License and registration." The kid laughed like the words were a joke. "I don't need a license." He pulled a gold phone from his pocket, fumbled it twice, and pressed it to his ear. His voice shifted, suddenly childlike, whining with entitlement. "Yeah, Dad? Yeah, it's me. Some K9 cop's bothering me. Handle it." He snapped the phone shut and stared at Ethan as if the call had rewritten reality. "He'll handle it," the kid said. "You're done." Ethan's face didn't change. "Step onto the sidewalk." The kid blinked, stunned. "What?" "I'm conducting a field sobriety test." For the first time, fear flickered behind the arrogance. Not fear of jail, fear of consequences he'd never had to taste. He tried anyway, walk and turn, one-leg stand, horizontal gaze. He failed every part spectacularly, nearly going down on uneven stones. Ethan wrote it down with methodical precision. Then he closed the notepad and unclipped his cuffs. The metallic click echoed in the humid air. "I'm placing you under arrest for driving under the influence." The kid's face drained. You can't. Do you know who I am?" Ethan stepped closer. "I know what you did. Turn around." Headlights washed over them, too bright, too sudden, bleaching the color from the square. A black SUV glided into the street from the opposite direction, silent as a predator. It boxed the cruiser and the convertible in like a closing jaw. The street didn't feel open anymore. It felt like a cage. The SUV's doors opened. 4 men stepped out, not drunk tourists, not street punks. Large bodies in immaculate dark suits, movements economical, purposeful, professionals. Ethan's hand shifted slightly near his holster, but he didn't draw. Drawing too soon could get someone killed. Drawing too late could get him killed. He centered himself. "Back up," he commanded, voice carrying. "Active arrest." They didn't slow. The first man lunged, not at Ethan's throat, not at his chest, at his weapon. He grabbed the holster assembly and wrenched, twisting with brutal efficiency. The whole rig tore free from Ethan's duty belt with a sharp snap of plastic and leather. Ethan's muscles tensed instinctively, but he forced himself not to fight the wrong fight. A weapon in their hands was a death sentence. He pivoted, trying to create distance, when the second man slammed his forearm against the cruiser, pinning Ethan's radio arm. The radio clattered to the stones. A third man moved behind Ethan and locked his arms back in a vice grip, controlling him completely. Pressure on joints, leverage in the right places. Not choking, not yet, just immobilizing. Ethan was trained, strong, capable. But this was a professional takedown. He was disarmed, isolated, held in place while the kid, the boss's son, staggered closer with a grin that looked like rot. "Hold him," the kid said, breath reeking of bourbon. "I want him to watch." Ethan's eyes flicked to the K9 cruiser. Shadow had risen halfway, barking now, a deep, furious sound muffled behind reinforced glass. His body pressed forward against the harness, muscles coiled. The kid's gaze followed. "You brought a dog," he said, voice laced with gleeful venom. "I hate dogs." Ethan's chest tightened. "Don't," Ethan said, voice low but dangerous. "Touch my partner." The kid didn't even look at him. He nodded to the 2 men. "Show him." The men moved toward the K9 door. Ethan's heart hit a hard, cold rhythm. He struggled, not wildly, not uselessly. Controlled effort, looking for leverage, a shift in grip, a mistake. But the man behind him adjusted, stronger than expected, pinning Ethan tighter. The K9 door popped with a hiss. Shadow exploded out. 90 pounds of disciplined power and loyalty. He launched at the nearest threat the way he'd been trained, teeth aiming for control points, body moving with purpose. They were ready, steel-toed boots. The first kick hit Shadow's ribs with a calculated full-force strike. The sound wasn't a yelp first. It was impact, wet and brutal, followed by a pained cry that cut through Ethan's body like it was happening inside his chest. Shadow tumbled sideways, scrambling to regain footing. The second kick landed before he could. Then another, then another. Systematic, not self-defense. Punishment. Ethan fought harder then, rage trying to break through discipline, but his code was discipline, and his discipline was the only thing keeping him alive. "Stop!" Ethan snapped, voice straining against the hold. "Stop!" The kid leaned in, inches from Ethan's face, smiling. "You hear that?" he whispered as Shadow's yelps grew thinner. "That's you learning your place." Ethan's vision narrowed. Not tunnel vision, focus. He watched the way the kicker's weight shifted when he reared back. He watched the man holding him, how his grip tightened with every scream. Confident Ethan was helpless, and he watched Shadow, still trying, still moving, even as his body shook. Loyalty under fire. A deep, cold resolve settled in Ethan's gut. Not panic, resolve. The man holding him breathed out, just for a second. A tiny adjustment. A moment of slack born from arrogance. Ethan used it. He drove the back of his head into the man's face with short, brutal force. Felt cartilage give, heard a grunt. The grip loosened. Ethan twisted hard, dropped his weight, and hooked his ankle behind the man's leg, using leverage instead of strength. They stumbled. Ethan wrenched free, one arm just enough to grab the chain of his own handcuffs still dangling from his ripped belt. He didn't think. He acted. He looped the cuff chain around the man's thick neck, pivoted behind him, and yanked back with full body weight the way he'd been trained for exactly one purpose. Stop the threat fast. The man made a choking animal sound. His hold collapsed. Ethan held the choke for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. The body went limp. Ethan released and let him drop like a cut rope. He turned. Shadow was on the ground, ribs heaving, blood on his muzzle, eyes still bright with fight. The two men with boots spun toward Ethan. They expected a disarmed cop. They got something else. Ethan moved like discipline given teeth. He closed distance before the first man could reset. He didn't throw a wide punch. Wide punches got blocked. He grabbed the man's wrist and elbow, twisted, hard, a wet pop. The man screamed and crumpled, arm useless. The second man swung, too high. Ethan ducked inside the arc, drove an elbow into ribs, then another into the jaw. The man dropped, air gone, eyes rolling. Silence hit the street like a shockwave. The boss's son stood frozen, gold phone still in his hand, mouth open. Ethan stepped toward him. The kid lifted his hands instinctively. Wait. Ethan didn't hit him. He didn't need to. He moved past him. Shadow. Ethan dropped to his knees beside the dog, hands hovering, afraid of hurting him with urgency. Shadow's breath was thready. He let out a small whimper that nearly broke Ethan's composure. Ethan put 2 fingers to Shadow's neck. Pulse. There, but thin. His other hand traced ribs with gentle precision. Pain flashed across Shadow's eyes, but the dog didn't pull away. He trusted Ethan more than pain. Ethan's voice dropped to a command. Shadow, stay with me. Shadow's ears flicked once, barely. Ethan reached for his radio. Empty. His weapon was gone. His belt was torn. He was kneeling in the street with a wounded partner and 3 downed attackers and 1 protected kid staring like he'd seen a ghost. A voice cut through the humidity behind him. Ethan! Captain Maria Hayes approached from the corner of the square, drawn by sirens, drawn by instinct. She wasn't in full uniform, jacket thrown over a simple shirt, but her eyes were sharp, assessing the scene instantly. Her gaze hit Shadow, then Ethan, then the unconscious men. Her face hardened. Ambulance is coming, she said. I heard the call go out. Ethan's jaw flexed. Nearest K9 emergency vet. Maria didn't hesitate. More animal forensics. Dr. Lena Moore. 4 minutes if you drive like you mean it. Ethan scooped Shadow up. The dog weighed less than he should have because pain and shock did strange things to a body. Shadow let out a thin sound, then stilled against Ethan's chest. Ethan carried him to the cruiser, laid him gently in the back seat insert, and climbed into the driver's seat. Maria opened the passenger door. I'm coming, she said, tone leaving no room for argument. Ethan didn't use the siren. He didn't need to. He drove with terrifying controlled speed through empty streets, navigating one-way squares like the map lived under his skin. Red lights became suggestions, corners became calculations. He got them to more animal forensics in under 4 minutes. The clinic doors burst open and bright sterile light hit them like an assault. Antiseptic, bleach, fear. Dr. Lena Moore looked up from the desk, eyes tired but brilliant, hair pulled back in a practical knot. She took one look at Shadow, blood, labored breathing, and her whole posture changed from civilian calm to surgical command. "Gurney," she called. Deputy Lucas Reed appeared from the back hallway in scrubs, of all things, carrying a box of supplies, like he'd been sent to pick up equipment for the department's K-9 program and got caught in the wrong moment. His energetic face went pale when he saw Ethan and Shadow. "Holy!" Maria's voice snapped. "Lucas, move!" Lucas moved. A team rolled a gurney out. Ethan laid Shadow on it with hands that were gentle but fast. Dr. Moore's fingers found Shadow's ribs with practiced precision. "Multiple fractures," she murmured. "Possible punctured lung, internal bleeding risk." Ethan's throat tightened. He was kicked, steel-toed, systematic. Dr. Moore didn't waste breath on anger. "Back," she said, and they wheeled Shadow through swinging doors. A clipboard appeared in front of Ethan. Handler information, allergies, pre-existing conditions. Ethan stared at the first line. His vision swam for half a second, not from blood loss, but from the delayed hit of helplessness he hadn't allowed himself to feel yet. Maria stepped closer, voice low. "Ethan?" "I can fill it out," Ethan said, but his hand trembled when he reached for the pen. Lucas took the clipboard, pen already in hand, trying to help without getting in the way. "I've got it. I know Shadow's file. I can—" Ethan's gaze snapped to him, not anger. Gratitude edged with intensity. Lucas swallowed. "Yes, sir," he wrote. Dr. Moore returned minutes later, scrubs already marked with red, eyes grave. Ethan stood before she spoke. Dr. Moore didn't sugarcoat. "Shadow is in critical condition. 3 ribs broken. 1 likely punctured a lung. Internal bleeding." Ethan's chest felt like it was filling with water. "What are his chances?" Maria asked, voice steady but tight. Dr. Moore exhaled. 50-50. Ethan's jaw clenched until it hurt. "I need consent to operate," Dr. Moore said. Ethan didn't hesitate. "Do it." Dr. Moore nodded once. "We will." She turned back toward the doors. Ethan stayed standing. He didn't sit because sitting meant collapse. Maria watched him, eyes softening just a fraction. "Ethan," she said quietly, "you did everything right." Ethan's voice was low, controlled, but edged with something raw. "I let them touch him." Maria didn't correct him. She knew guilt wasn't logical. It was loyalty turned inward. Lucas returned with the clipboard finished, face tight. "Shadow's file, updated," he said. "No known allergies, no conditions, just stubborn." Ethan's mouth twitched, almost a smile, almost grief. Dr. Moore had said 50-50. Ethan stood in a clinic that smelled like antiseptic and helplessness, waiting while someone cut his partner open to keep him alive. Outside, somewhere in the city, a boss's son was already calling lawyers, and Ethan knew something that tasted like iron in his mouth. This wasn't over, not even close. Ethan didn't go home. He went to the precinct because the precinct was where you filed your truth before someone else rewrote it. Morning light stained the sky a sickly yellow, filtering through humid haze. The squad room smelled like burnt coffee, industrial cleaner, and the ozone of old computers. Ethan sat at his desk with his uniform stiffening where Shadow's blood had dried. His hand still shook slightly as he typed the report. Not because he was afraid, because adrenaline always left a debt. He wrote every detail: reckless driving, DUI indicators, arrest attempt, arrival of black SUV, 4 men, disarmament, assault on K-9, defensive action. Names he didn't have, faces he didn't embellish, he didn't soften. He wrote like a man documenting a war crime. Captain Maria Hayes called him into her office. Glass walls, a desk too clean, the weight of leadership settling around her shoulders like armor. She didn't offer condolences. She offered facts. "I just got off the phone with Dr. Moore," she said. "Shadow is out of surgery. It was touch and go. He's stable." Ethan's breath left him in a way he hadn't realized he'd been holding it. A single hot tear threatened. He blinked it back. Maria watched him for a moment, then glanced down at the report. Her eyes moved line by line, her jaw tightened. Then she stopped. Not at the assault, at the name Ethan had typed for the arrested driver, the boss's son. Maria looked up slowly, her expression no longer just supportive, worried in a way that was older than fear. "Ethan," she said quietly, "are you certain?" Ethan's voice was flat. "He introduced himself. He called his father in front of me." Maria leaned back, the chair creaking. She rubbed her eyes as if trying to erase what she already knew. "He was bailed out 3 hours ago," she said. Ethan's head snapped up. "How?" Maria's mouth tightened. "His lawyer was at booking before backup even finished processing the scene. This family, they own half the docks, half the shipping, and some people say half the city council." Ethan stared at her, disbelief hardening into cold anger. "He tried to kill my partner," Ethan said. "He assaulted an officer." Maria nodded once. "I know." She leaned forward, eyes locking onto Ethan's. "Your report is perfect. Your actions were by the book. But you need to understand what you stepped on." Ethan's voice dropped. "A hornet's nest." Maria's lips didn't move into a smile. "A dragon's lair," she exhaled. "I'm placing you on administrative leave 72 hours, she said. Ethan's shoulders stiffened. "I'm fine." "That wasn't a request," Maria said, voice gentle but iron. "Standard procedure after an officer-involved incident." Ethan knew what it really was. Isolation. They would take his badge, his weapon, and his access. They would take Shadow. They would leave him exposed. Maria's voice softened just slightly. "Go see him," she said. "Then go home, lock your doors. Don't be predictable." Ethan stood. "Yes, ma'am." He left with his report filed and his stomach full of something heavy, because Ethan Cole believed in the system, and the system had just shown him its teeth. The first threat came in daylight. A man stepped out from behind a concrete pillar near Ethan's car in the police lot, impeccably tailored suit, smile too bright, briefcase in hand like he was here for a meeting. Ethan stopped. His instincts flared. Not fear, assessment. The man's posture said confidence. His eyes said calculation. "Officer Cole," the man said smoothly, "a moment of your time." Ethan's face stayed neutral. "I'm on leave." "My apologies," the man said, smile unchanged. "I represent a concerned party. We'd like to smooth out last night's unfortunate misunderstanding." Ethan held the man's gaze without blinking. "Misunderstanding," Ethan repeated. The smile tightened by a fraction. "Yes, there are witnesses prepared to state that your K-9 became agitated, attacked first, and that my client's security detail acted in self-defense." Ethan's voice was quiet. "You're attempting to bribe a police officer." The man's smile vanished like a switch flipped. Cold replaced charm. "Accusatory term," he said. "I'm offering a solution." He stepped closer, voice dropping to confidential. "This city can be a dangerous place, Officer Cole," he said softly. "Especially for someone distracted, grieving." He looked past Ethan toward the street. "I do hope your brakes are reliable," he added. "Savannah gets slippery when it rains." He didn't wait for a reply. He walked back to a black Mercedes and glided away, leaving the threat hanging in the air heavier than humidity. Ethan stood still for a moment, not frozen, listening. The system was already moving to bury him, and now the Dragon's people had made sure he understood the cost of standing up. Ethan pulled out his phone. A text message flashed from an unknown number. "How's the warrior?" Ethan's breath caught. Only one person at the clinic had used that word. Dr. Lena Moore's voice, calm and practical, echoing in his mind. "K-9S aren't pets, they're warriors." Ethan typed back with controlled fingers. "Stable, out of surgery, critical phase." The reply came instantly. "I'm aware of the threat. Your home is a tactical vulnerability. I'm coming." Ethan stared at the message. Tactical vulnerability. Cold, accurate. His fingers hovered over the screen. He typed, "You don't have to." The response was immediate. "Yes, I do. I'm 10 minutes out." Ethan didn't ask who. He didn't need to. 10 minutes later, a firm knock hit his apartment door. Purposeful, not hesitant, not aggressive. Ethan checked through the peephole. Deputy Lucas Reed stood there with a canvas tool bag slung over one shoulder and a sealed hardware package in his hand. Ethan opened the door. Lucas stepped in like he belonged there, eyes instantly scanning hinges, lock, window proximity. The kind of details rookies didn't notice unless someone had taught them. "This," Lucas said, holding up the package, "is a Grade 1 deadbolt." Ethan glanced at his current lock. Lucas pointed at it with a grim humor that didn't quite land. "And this is a suggestion." Ethan's mouth twitched. "Where'd you learn this?" Lucas's grin was small. My uncle was a locksmith. Also, Captain Hayes told me to make sure you didn't get yourself killed while the department pretends it's procedure. Ethan stepped aside. Lucas dropped the tool bag and got to work. Power drill, ratchet, metal plate reinforcement in the door jamb, secondary locks on windows. No wasted motion, fast, competent, a rookie who took instructions seriously. Ethan watched him, gratitude tightening something in his chest. "They're isolating me," Ethan said quietly. Lucas didn't stop working. "Yeah." Ethan's voice stayed calm. "Shadow is all I have here." Lucas paused, glanced back, expression softening. "I know," he said. "That's why I'm here." The phone rang. Clinic. Ethan's whole body went rigid. Lucas froze too, drill in hand. Ethan stared at the screen like it might kill him. "I can't," Ethan whispered. "I can't answer it." Lucas stepped forward and hit speaker before Ethan could stop him. "Officer Cole's phone," Lucas said. Dr. Lena Moore's voice came through, tired but warm. "Officer," she said, "I wanted you to know your partner is a medical miracle. He's stubborn, tough as nails." Ethan's knees went weak for a half-second. He steadied himself on the counter. "His vitals have been solid for 3 hours," Dr. Moore continued. "Internal bleeding has stopped. Lung function is improving." Ethan's throat tightened. "He's pulling through," Dr. Moore said. "He's going to make it." Relief hit Ethan like a physical force. He didn't collapse. He didn't sob. He closed his eyes and breathed out one long, controlled breath that tasted like survival. Lucas let out a sound, half laugh, half choke, like he'd been holding his own fear too. Ethan opened his eyes. "Thank you, doctor," he said, voice rougher than he wanted. Dr. Moore's voice softened. "Get some rest, and keep him close when he comes home." The call ended. Silence filled the apartment. Lucas wiped his hands on his jeans, then looked at Ethan. "You okay?" Ethan's answer was honest. "No," he said, "but I will be." Ethan's gaze drifted to the reinforced door. It wasn't safety. It was time. And time was what Ethan needed, because the system had already begun to turn, not to protect him, to protect itself. 2 days later, Maria Hayes called Ethan in. The squad room felt different when you weren't wearing a badge. Ethan walked in with an empty belt and no weapon, and he felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with vulnerability and everything to do with betrayal. Cops who used to joke with him stared at their screens. No eye contact, no warmth. The dragon's influence didn't punch you in the face. It made you invisible. Maria waited in her office, face drawn. She didn't offer coffee. She didn't waste time. "I'm going to be straight with you," she said. "It's out of my hands." Ethan's jaw flexed. "Internal Affairs is opening an investigation," she said. Ethan's chest went cold. "Into what?" he asked, voice controlled but tight. Maria's eyes flicked down, then back up, ashamed, furious, exhausted. "Into your escalation of a routine traffic stop," she said. "Into the excessive force used to neutralize the security detail." Ethan stared at her. "They tried to kill Shadow." "I know," Maria said, voice low. "And their counsel is filing a complaint against the department, against you." Ethan's hands curled slowly into fists. "Then what?" he asked. Maria's voice dropped. "They're making you the problem, Ethan." She exhaled, anger draining into weary leadership. "I'm ordering you to desk duty, archives, cold cases." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "No street contact, no active files, and you will not, under any circumstances, attempt to contact their counsel." Ethan's voice was flat. "You're burying me." Maria held his gaze. "I'm trying to keep you alive," she said quietly. "There's a difference." Ethan knew she meant it. He also knew it didn't matter, because the dragon didn't need the department to kill him. It only needed the department to look away. At 2:17 a.m., the wolves came. A dark blue commercial van rolled down Ethan's street and parked half on the curb like it didn't care who saw it. The side read Acme Plumbing in faded letters. No plumber worked at 2 in the morning. Ethan sat in darkness inside his apartment, breath quiet, lights off, body still. Lucas sat in Ethan's kitchen with a cheap cup of coffee, jittering like he wanted to move because stillness wasn't his natural state. Ethan's eyes stayed on the blinds. "You were right," Lucas whispered. Ethan didn't answer. He listened. Footsteps. 2 sets. Heavy. Crowbars clinked. Ethan's pulse didn't spike. It sharpened. The doorknob rattled once. then again, then the crowbar slid in, but Lucas had reinforced the jam. It held. The crowbar pried harder. Metal groaned. Ethan moved, not to the door, to the side. Shadow wasn't here yet, still recovering, so Ethan had to become the wall Shadow usually was. Ethan's hand settled on the small pistol Maria had quietly authorized him to keep during leave, off the books, not spoken about. Lucas's eyes widened. Ethan's expression stayed calm. "Do not move," Ethan mouthed. The door gave an inch, just enough. Ethan stepped into the shadowed angle beside it. The door burst open. 2 men shoved in, with crowbars raised. They didn't see Ethan until he hit them. Ethan attacked the weapon first, wrist strike, grip broken, crowbar clattering to the floor. Then a short blade hand to the throat, silencing, disabling. The first man collapsed, gagging, sound trapped inside his own panic. The second man swung his crowbar in a wide arc that would have split skull. Ethan wasn't there. He ducked inside the swing, grabbed wrist and elbow, and used momentum to slam the man face first into the wall. A hollow crack. The man dropped like a sack. Lucas stared, frozen for half a second, then moved to lock the broken door. Ethan dragged both men back outside with a grim efficiency and shoved them into their own van. He took the keys. He looked down the street. Nothing. But Ethan knew this was the test. The next ones wouldn't be sloppy. Inside, Lucas's voice shook. "Ethan? What are we doing?" Ethan looked at him. "Surviving," he said, "until we can expose them." Lucas swallowed. Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from Maria. "They're moving to fire you. I'm sorry." Ethan stared at the message. Then he typed back, "I'm done playing by their rules." He looked at Lucas. "Get your gear," Ethan said. Lucas blinked. "What?" Ethan's voice went colder, sharper. "We're going to get them on tape." Lucas's eyes widened. "That's illegal," Ethan finished, "and it's the only way." Lucas hesitated. Then, slowly, he nodded. Because loyalty didn't always look like obedience. Sometimes it looked like standing next to someone when the system turned away. The city didn't sleep. It just changed masks. By the time dawn bled into Savannah, pale light filtered through humidity and history, Ethan Cole had already learned the shape of the fight. Not the street fight. Not the kind you could solve with cuffs and reports and clean procedure. This was the other kind, the one where power didn't need to win the truth. It only needed to make the truth irrelevant. Ethan sat at a metal desk in the precinct basement in a room that smelled like dust, paper rot, and the faint chemical sting of photocopier toner. The archives weren't punishment on the surface. They were desk duty. They were review. In reality, they were a tomb, a place where a cop with too much heat got buried in cold cases until the world forgot his name. Deputy Lucas Reed dropped a box of file folders onto the desk with a grunt and a forced brightness that didn't reach his eyes. "Congrats," Lucas muttered. "You've been promoted." Ethan didn't look up. "To what?" Lucas gestured around them. Windowless walls, buzzing fluorescent lights, shelves of dead paperwork. "To archaeologist. Dig deep enough, and you might find Jimmy Hoffa." A humor attempt, a pressure valve. Lucas was good at that. Ethan didn't smile, but his mouth moved as if it almost remembered how. "Any update?" Ethan asked. Lucas's expression tightened. "Dr. Moore said Shadow's stable, still in ICU." "Still angry!" Ethan's chest eased, just a fraction. Angry meant alive. Ethan's phone buzzed again. Not Maria, not the clinic, a number he didn't recognize. He didn't answer. A text came through instead. "Officer Cole, a private solution remains available." A second message followed immediately, like the sender knew he'd try to ignore it. "Tonight, midnight, River Warehouse. Come alone. Bring your clarification." Ethan's eyes didn't narrow. They went flat. Lucas leaned closer. "Who is it?" Ethan tilted the phone so Lucas could read without taking it. Lucas swore under his breath. "That's them." Ethan's voice was quiet. "They want me isolated, away from cameras, away from the precinct, away from anything that makes a body hard to disappear." Lucas swallowed. "So we don't go." Ethan stared at the shelves, case files stacked like gravestones. "You heard Captain Hayes," Ethan said. "They're moving to fire me. They've already started rewriting the narrative. If I do nothing, they bury me. If I push through channels, they bury me faster." Lucas's voice dropped. "So what are we doing?" Ethan turned slowly toward him, calm the way storm water is calm before it rises. "We're going to expose them," he said. Lucas held his breath. "How?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. He thought about procedure. He thought about legality. He thought about what Maria had warned him, Dragon's Lair. Then he thought about Shadow's eyes when the boots landed, and the cold part of Ethan, the disciplined part that didn't confuse anger for strategy, locked onto a path. "We get them to say it," Ethan said. "On record." Lucas's eyebrows lifted. "Wire?" "Not department," Ethan replied. "If IA is compromised, chain of custody becomes a weapon against us. We need raw truth first. Then we decide what platform burns brightest." Lucas let out a shaky exhale. "Ethan, this is the part where people say, this is insane." Ethan's gaze held. "This is the part where people survive." Lucas stared back at him for a long beat. Then, against his own fear, he nodded. "Okay," Lucas whispered. "Tell me what you need." They didn't build the plan in the basement. They built it at Moore Animal Forensics after hours, when the clinic had that exhausted quiet that came after crisis. Lights dimmed, staff reduced, the scent of antiseptic still floating like a reminder. Dr. Lena Moore met them at the back door. She didn't ask why Ethan was here. She could read a room the way she read fractures on an X-ray. Her eyes flicked from Ethan's face to Lucas's tense posture, then to the bruise blooming faintly along Ethan's forearm from the night of the assault. "You're not sleeping," she said. Ethan's tone stayed even. "Shadow?" Dr. Moore's expression softened just enough to be human. "Stable, pain managed, breathing improved. He tried to bite a tech who adjusted his harness." Lucas almost smiled through the tension. "That's our guy." Dr. Moore gave him a look. "That's trauma, but yes, it's also him." Ethan exhaled slowly, like his ribs had been holding something tight. Then he said, "They want a meeting." Dr. Moore didn't ask who "they" were. "Where?" Ethan told her. "Midnight, Riverside Warehouse." Dr. Moore's face didn't change much, but something sharpened in her eyes. "And you're going." Ethan didn't deny it. Lucas shifted. "We want evidence, clean audio, admission, bribe, threats, attack, whatever they'll say when they think Ethan's broken." Dr. Moore stared at Ethan for a long moment. "Do you understand what you're asking?" she said quietly. "Once you step into that warehouse, you're no longer protected by anything except your own preparation." Ethan held her gaze. "That's why I'm asking you." Dr. Moore was forensic by nature. Truth mattered to her more than comfort. She walked to a cabinet and unlocked it with a key she wore on a chain. She pulled out a small device, flat, matte black, no bigger than a credit card. "High-fidelity digital recorder," she said. "It's designed to pick up heartbeat-level vibration through fabric. It's not perfect, but it's better than any cheap wire." Lucas leaned in. "Where'd you get that?" Dr. Moore's eyes stayed on Ethan. "I consult, I testify. Sometimes I'm handed tools by people who don't like losing cases on technicalities." She slid the recorder across the table. Ethan didn't take it yet. "Is it traceable?" Dr. Moore shook her head. "No serial, no wireless, no GPS. It records. That's it." Lucas swallowed. "What about an earpiece?" Dr. Moore opened another drawer and produced a tiny flesh-colored piece. "One way," she said, "we can route a feed into Lucas's phone through a hardline adapter. Minimal signal, minimal risk." Ethan's gaze flicked to Lucas. Lucas's face tightened. "I'm Overwatch?" Ethan nodded once. "Yes." Lucas's voice strained. "Ethan." "Lucas," Ethan cut in, not harsh, just absolute. "You're competent, you're careful, and you're the only person in this department I trust to listen and not panic." Lucas stared at him like he'd just been handed a weight he didn't know he could carry. "Okay," Lucas said, voice low. "Overwatch." Dr. Moore watched them, then reached under the counter and set down a small firearm case. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Dr. Moore didn't flinch. "If you're going into an ambush, I'm not letting you go in with empty hands." She opened it. A compact pistol lay inside. Lucas went rigid. "Doctor! Doctor!" Moore's voice was calm, but there was steel under it. "It's legal, registered, and it stays on Ethan until he hands it back." Ethan didn't reach for it immediately. He studied it like it was a last resort in physical form. Then he looked at Dr. Moore. "Thank you," he said. Dr. Moore's eyes softened slightly. "Don't thank me. Bring him back." Ethan nodded once. Dr. Moore tapped the recorder. "Where will you place it?" Ethan answered without hesitation. "Small of my back, under my belt line, hard to sweep without getting too familiar." Lucas let out a breath. "That's grim." Ethan's face didn't move. "That's accurate." Dr. Moore handed Lucas a small adapter cable. "If your phone gets jammed, you won't have live feed, but the recorder will still capture. Your job is to get Ethan out if you hear the signal." Ethan's brow lifted slightly. "Signal?" Lucas glanced at him, then at Dr. Moore. Dr. Moore said, "Triple-click static pulse. If you hear it, you leave. Immediately." Ethan stared at her. "I'm not leaving." Dr. Moore's eyes locked on his. "If you die in that warehouse, Shadow loses you. Captain Hayes loses you. This city loses you. You don't get to be a martyr." For a second, the room held a different tension, less tactical, more personal. Ethan looked away first, then he nodded. Understood. Ethan made the call from his apartment. He didn't pace. Pacing was nervous energy. It made you sloppy. He sat at his kitchen table, the reinforced door behind him, Lucas in the corner near the window like a sentinel, Dr. Moore's recorder already taped to Ethan's lower back under his shirt. Lucas held up his phone, the line ready. Ethan dialed the number associated with the earlier threat. It rang once. Twice. A smooth voice answered. "Officer Cole," the voice said, pleasant as poison, "I'm glad you decided to be reasonable." Ethan let his voice change. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just enough. A tired edge, a hint of defeat. "I can't do this," Ethan said quietly. "They're burying me. IA, archives. I'm done." A soft chuckle on the line. "You see, the system has a way of correcting itself. Now, about your report." Ethan swallowed, audible, deliberate. "I'll clarify," Ethan said. "I'll say Shadow attacked. I'll say your client's people defended themselves. I need help." "Of course," the voice purred. "Compassion is our family's greatest virtue." Ethan's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed broken. "The money you offered," Ethan said. "I need it. Shadow's surgery." Another chuckle. "Handled. Midnight. River Warehouse. Bring your clarification." Ethan paused like he was afraid to ask the next line. "Will your client be there?" Ethan asked. A beat. Then the voice said, "Yes." Ethan's stomach went cold. He kept it out of his tone. "Okay," he said. The call ended. Lucas stared at him. That sounded real. Ethan's voice was flat again. It was real, just not the part he thinks. Lucas lifted his phone. "Recorder's running." Ethan stood, checked the compact pistol in his waistband, then looked at the reinforced lock Lucas had installed. "Lock up," Ethan said. Lucas nodded. "I'll be outside." Ethan's gaze sharpened. "No, not outside here. Overwatch from distance. You do not follow me into that warehouse." Lucas bristled. "Ethan?" "That's an order," Ethan said quietly. Lucas exhaled, anger and fear mixing. "Fine, distance." Dr. Moore's voice came through Lucas's phone. She was on the line too, sitting at the clinic with Shadow, listening. "Ethan," she said, "remember, evidence over ego." Ethan's voice softened by a fraction. "Copy." He left. The river warehouse was a skeleton. Steel and corrugated tin, half lit by bare bulbs that swung slightly as if the building itself breathed. The air smelled of rust, dead fish, and damp wood that had been left to rot. Ethan parked where instructed. He sat for 3 seconds, letting his eyes adjust to the darkness, letting his mind settle. Then he stepped out. The night was colder here. The river's chill cut through humidity like a knife. Ethan walked toward the open bay door. Inside, the warehouse swallowed sound. Every footstep echoed. Julian Kay stood in the center, suit too perfect for the filth, smile laid across his face like a mask. "Officer Cole," Kay said warmly. "Ethan, I'm glad you came." Ethan stepped forward with measured caution. Then he stopped. Because Kay wasn't alone. The boss's son stood beside him. The kid's arrogance looked different tonight. No slur, no stumble, no bourbon haze. Clean eyes, sharp hate. And behind them, men in black cargo pants, plate carriers, rifles, not suits, not bodyguards, operators. Ethan's blood turned to ice. "You really thought we were going to pay you?" the kid said, voice cutting, "after what you did to my men?" Ethan's pulse stayed steady. The kid gestured lazily toward the rifles. "New security. Cost my father a fortune. I came to pull the weed by the root." Ethan kept his face neutral. Inside his ear, the tiny earpiece clicked once. Lucas's feed. Lucas's whisper came through, barely audible. "Ethan, I'm seeing movement on upper catwalk. 2, maybe more." Ethan didn't react outwardly. Kay stepped closer, smile fading into something colder. "You're not leaving," Kay murmured. Ethan's voice stayed low, defeated on purpose. "I came to talk." "You came to die," the kid snapped. Ethan's fingers flexed slightly at his side. He didn't go for the gun. He didn't escalate, because escalation was what they wanted. A mercenary moved to Ethan's flank, rifle angled, flashlight ready. Kay leaned in. "Where's the recording device, Officer Cole?" Ethan's stomach dropped. They knew. Lucas's voice hissed in Ethan's ear. Urgent. "Ethan, abort. Abort now." Ethan took a slow half-step back. "I forgot," Ethan began, forcing panic into his voice. "I forgot my bag." A mercenary blocked the exit. The kid's smile disappeared. "No," he said, "you're not going anywhere." Lucas's whisper sharpened. "Ethan, it's a trap. They're sweeping. The feed cut to harsh static, jammed. Ethan's world narrowed, not to fear, to action. The kid lifted his pistol. "You and your dog?" Ethan moved before the sentence finished. Not toward the kid, toward the environment. He threw himself sideways behind a rusted support pillar as the mercenary's flashlight snapped on, beams slicing through darkness. Shots erupted, automatic bursts. Bullets tore into the space where Ethan had been standing. Concrete spalled, metal screamed. The warehouse became chaos. Ethan's mind stayed cold. He pulled the compact pistol, kept it low, and breathed. "Shadow isn't here. I have to be the wall." The mercenaries moved in pairs, beams sweeping, trying to paint Ethan into a corner. Kay's voice rose, shrill now. "Find him!" The kid screamed something obscene. Ethan stayed silent. Then, outside, an explosive pop cracked the night. The bulbs above didn't flicker. They exploded. Sparks rained. The entire warehouse plunged into absolute darkness. For a stunned second, even the gunfire paused. Like everyone's brain needed time to understand, the world had been amputated. Then, the mercenaries' weapon lights snapped on again, beams cutting frantic white lines through the black. Ethan pressed his cheek to cold metal, heart steady. And through the darkness, a new sound wailed faintly in the distance. Sirens. Ethan didn't wonder how. He knew Lucas had made the call. Somewhere outside, Lucas Reed was doing Overwatch the only way he could without a rifle, by forcing the cavalry into motion. The mercenaries shouted over each other, sweeping beams, trying to regain control. Ethan moved, low, fast, between pillars, behind stacks of pallets, using the darkness the way Shadow used scent, like a map only he could read. A flashlight beam caught the edge of Ethan's sleeve. A mercenary yelled, "There!" Ethan rolled. A burst of fire tore through the pillar he'd been behind, chewing rust and concrete. Ethan's ears rang. He didn't panic. He breathed once, then surged forward into the beam's blind spot. He hit the mercenary before the rifle could track. Ethan didn't shoot. Shooting was noise. Shooting was escalation. Shooting was court arguments later. Ethan slammed his shoulder into the mercenary's chest, drove him backward into a metal wall, and delivered a tight, brutal strike to the throat. The mercenary gagged, dropped the rifle, collapsed. Ethan grabbed the rifle by the sling and shoved it away into darkness. Now the kid was screaming, voice cracking. "Where is he?" Kay's voice was thin, frightened. This wasn't supposed to. The kid fired blindly into darkness, muzzle flashes strobing briefly. Ethan tracked those flashes like coordinates. He moved closer. One mercenary limped near the exit, leg hit by flying debris. Another crawled, wind knocked out. Ethan didn't execute, he disabled. Precision, discipline. He closed on the kid. The kid backed up, pistol shaking. "Stay back!" Ethan stepped into the edge of the flashlight beam the kid's remaining guard held. The light blinded the guard more than it helped him. Ethan used it. A short, efficient strike to the guard's wrist. Pistol clattered. Ethan drove his forearm into the guard's throat, then swept the legs. The guard went down hard, breath gone. Now it was just the kid and Kay. Kay was sobbing somewhere to Ethan's right. The kid stood frozen, his pistol useless in trembling hands. Ethan stepped closer, silent as a shadow. The kid didn't see him until Ethan pressed the compact pistol to the kid's temple. The kid yelped, body jerking like a shocked animal. "Drop it," Ethan said. The kid dropped the pistol. Ethan didn't shoot. He struck. A single open palm hit, controlled, professional, sent the kid reeling into a support beam. The kid cried out, stunned. Ethan caught his wrist, twisted it behind his back, and snapped cuffs on him with a metallic click that echoed through darkness like a verdict. "You are under arrest," Ethan said, voice low, steady. "Again." Ethan shifted his stance, pulling the kid away from any windows, because he'd learned something tonight. The warehouse had eyes. Overwatch. Counter-overwatch. Somewhere, someone had wanted Ethan dead. But Lucas had called the cavalry fast enough to change the math. Sirens grew louder. Then floodlights cut through gaps in the warehouse walls, turning darkness into harsh, washed-out gray. Red and blue strobes bled into the space. Boots pounded outside. Voices shouted. And Captain Maria Hayes was the first through the bay door, gun drawn, face carved from disbelief. She stopped when she saw Ethan standing. Alive, dirty, breathing. The boss's son cuffed to a support beam. Kay whimpering near a stack of pallets, mercenaries groaning on the floor, alive but neutralized. Maria's gaze locked on Ethan. For a second she didn't speak. Then her voice came out raw. "Ethan," she said, "what did you do?" Ethan's hand still trembled slightly, not from fear, from adrenaline debt. He didn't look away. "I was on desk duty," Ethan said, "reviewing a cold case." Maria stared at him like she wanted to laugh and cry and scream all at once. Then she stepped in, lower voice. "Where's Reed?" Ethan's eyes flicked toward the bay door. "Overwatch," Ethan said. Maria's jaw tightened. "He called it in?" Ethan nodded once. Maria exhaled through her nose, then looked at the cuffed kid. "You've just lit a fire that doesn't go out," she said. Ethan's voice was calm. "Good." Maria held his gaze, then turned to the arriving officers. "Secure the scene," she snapped. "Paramedics for the downed. Get IA here. Federal liaison, too." Ethan's eyes flicked. "Federal?" he asked quietly. Maria's face hardened. "If we're lucky, yes. This is bigger than the department." Ethan thought of Shadow again, how the system had failed him. He didn't let himself hope. Not yet. A week later, Forsyth Park looked like a different city. The humidity had eased. The air felt lighter. The sun wasn't a threat, just warmth. Ethan stood in jeans and a plain shirt, shoulders still carrying a weight he couldn't set down, even in daylight. Shadow bounded across the grass, ribs wrapped in a white medical harness, moving stiff but determined. His tail wagged like he'd chosen joy on purpose. Ethan tossed a bright blue ball. Shadow caught it midair, landed, and ran back with the kind of pride only a working dog carried, like the game was a mission. He dropped the ball at Ethan's feet and barked once. Ethan crouched, ran a hand along Shadow's neck with a gentleness that didn't match the violence the world had shown them. "You're a warrior," Ethan murmured. Shadow's ears flicked, as if he agreed. A shadow fell over the grass. Captain Maria Hayes stood beside Ethan, hands in pockets, posture relaxed but eyes sharp. "He looks good," she said. Ethan nodded. "Stubborn." Maria's mouth curved slightly. "Dr. Moore says he tried to bite her again." Ethan almost smiled. "That means he's healing." Maria looked out across the park. Families, students, tourists. Normal life, moving like nothing ever happened. Then her voice dropped. "Federal investigation is moving," she said. Quietly, but it's moving. Ethan didn't ask how she knew. Maria always knew. "And you?" Ethan asked. Maria's gaze stayed forward. "IA is still sniffing, but the story is changing. Evidence does that." Ethan's jaw flexed. "What about Reed?" Maria glanced sideways. "He's getting a commendation, off the books if I have to write it myself." Ethan's chest tightened, gratitude sharp and uncomfortable. "He did what he had to." Maria's eyes softened. "So did you." They stood for a moment, watching Shadow circle back, drop the ball again, bark like the world owed him a throw. Ethan reached down and picked the ball up. He hesitated. Not because he didn't want to throw, because he knew something. This city would never feel simple again. Maria watched him. "You're not in the archives anymore," she said quietly. Ethan's voice was calm. "No, Maria's gaze flicked to the harness around Shadow's ribs. "Keep your lock secure," she said. Ethan looked at her. A small nod passed between them. Leadership and soldier. Truth and survival. Ethan threw the ball. Shadow sprinted after it like nothing in the world could catch him. For the first time in days, Ethan let himself breathe as if the air belonged to him again. Not because darkness was gone, but because he and Shadow had proven something the dragon's lair couldn't understand. You could bruise loyalty, you could threaten it, you could try to bury it in paperwork and fear, but you couldn't break it. Not when it was forged in discipline, not when it was guarded by a partner who would still run, still fight, still come back, and not when the man holding the leash refused to look away.